All right. Thanks, Adam. Okay. So maybe just to kind of like get the ball rolling, if you could talk a little bit about Weiss Digital Consulting and what are the types of businesses that you're typically working with and the types of things that you're doing for them.
Sure. So Weiss Digital Consulting, I always tell people I wish I thought of a more clever name, but I focus on affiliate marketing, focus on publishers and technology partners specifically, and helping them develop a strategy for working within the affiliate ecosystem with partnership development and hence monetization. Most agencies and consultancies in the affiliate space are geared towards supporting advertisers and their growth, and I think a lot of them do an amazing job. But always seems to me that the publisher side of the business was a little bit underrepresented in terms of helping strategically. And that's sort of where I come in to help. And it could look many different ways depending who the publisher or partner is, where they're at in their life cycle, what goals they have, and ultimately, what they're looking to achieve. And that's where I come in and usually provide a solution.
So in the world that we operate in with, we're mostly working with SaaS companies. I think maybe 80% of our customers are SaaS companies. And living in this world, the language that people tend to use is a little bit different than sort of the industry vets within affiliate marketing. So the veterans or sort of more established affiliate marketers will use language like publisher and advertiser. And in our world, it's instead of publisher, it would be affiliate, and instead of advertiser, it might be merchant or program manager or something like that. So you're working primarily with the affiliates, as they were in our model. Without giving out specific names, what are sort of the nature of the types of publishers that you're working with? Are they kind of like online bloggers, or what's the nature of types of business that's operating as an affiliate or a publisher to the scale where they're looking to bring on an external consultant?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a good point as well about nomenclature, affiliate, media partner, distribution partner, publisher. They could all be used synonymously. And then on the other side of the equation, advertiser, merchant, brand, retailer, et cetera. So I think it's good to actually establish sort of what's what in terms of what we call these things. In terms of who I work with and the types of publishers that I work with, it really varies. I have done work with large content publishers, review sites. I have done work with coupon and deal sites. I have done work with loyalty businesses. I have done work with small startups in the space, loyalty startups, as well as some that are in growth mode, vertically specific in the travel and financial services space. It really varies. And the services that I provide them, like I was saying earlier, it's based on their needs, but some of them, it could be market entry. When you think about how big of an ecosystem we work in and all the moving parts and players from a technology standpoint, as well as service standpoint, because you have your kind of core networks and platforms in the middle. And in some cases, you have sub networks or meta networks, as some folks call them, and then technology to support it. And then on the advertiser side, you have agency business as well. All of this to say, it's a lot to navigate. Aside from the fact that you just want to build a strategy, what's the market size look like? What is the competitive landscape look like? Who am I going up against? What are the things that brands are looking for, gaps, et cetera? And I'll help build that, put a plan together to get into the market. And then once you're in the market, sometimes there are folks who are looking for growth, acceleration of partnerships, understanding if they're set up correctly, what are the right things to do to create efficiency from a partnership operations standpoint. So those are all things that fit into the wheelhouse of what I do. And then sometimes there are folks who are looking for what's next. What should we do with the business? It's a mature business. And I'll come in and again, look at the landscape, value proposition, where there might be opportunities, good fits, et cetera, and help them understand what the opportunity is for the business for the longer term.
There's something you're saying in there that really got me thinking around go to market and like trying to figure out like, okay, how are we, for example, how are we gonna, what kind of offers would we promote and things like that. So one of the most common questions that we'll get from our customers is like, oh, how do I find affiliates? And so it's interesting then looking at from say a publisher or affiliates perspective. I'd be curious to know, working from the publisher side, what are the types of things that you're looking for in terms of advertisers or offers that you want to promote from the publisher's perspective?
Well, I think it is dependent on the publisher themselves. So if it's a vertical specific publisher in the travel space, that's obviously going to guide what are some of the offers we're looking at. Do we want to go through an aggregator or direct? Where do we think it's ultimately, everything to me comes down to what the customer ultimately is looking for and what I can provide them that allows them to make a more informed decision. Meaning, can I provide them better value by going through an aggregator or going direct? And I'm making up an example, but Expedia versus Marriott direct if I'm a travel publisher. Are there unique benefits when I book directly to Marriott that I want to make available to my user? Or maybe there's unique benefits, or I know there's a pretty interesting loyalty program through Expedia and hotels.com, but like, is that value to the customer? How do I put both of those things in front of them and ultimately let them make the choice? So when I'm working with publishers and we're looking at who we want to partner with, it's all going to vary on the publisher, but at the end of the day, yes, the economics matter, but you ultimately want to inform the customer how to make the best possible decision for the purchase that they're about to make. And that's how you start to evaluate things. And then on the flip side, you want to make sure that there's a give and a get, and like everyone understands the unique goals of each side of the partnership. What are you as a brand trying to achieve? Can I help you achieve those goals? And it's probably pretty basic stuff, but I think sometimes it falls to the wayside. And so if I could help you meet those goals, then what are the things that we could do together that make it economically feasible for both of us to do it, provide value for the consumer, and ultimately drive revenue for the brand and for the publisher as well. So there's sort of a couple of different things you got to look at. But I always, at the end of the day, think of it from a consumer perspective. If I'm going to this publisher site, what am I looking for? And is that publisher providing me that value that I'm looking for?
How do you think about, for lack of a better word, inventory? So obviously there's a finite amount of offers that a publisher can promote on their website or their properties, right? And so how do you think about that in terms of the number of offers that you're going to promote or the number of advertisers that you're going to work with? Or is it infinite, right? I would imagine there's got to be some limit, even just in terms of your own capacity to kind of contemplate these things. So how do you think about that balance versus, trying to just promote as many offers as possible versus, going for sort of like the most high value partners that you're going to work with?
Oh, I think one big factor is the type of publisher model that you're working with. So if I'm a coupon or a deal site, I probably want to have more breadth in terms of the advertiser partners that I work with. So if, as a customer, I'm coming there, I could find the big brands and retailers everyone knows, but maybe there's something niche as well. And also for those smaller, more niche brands, these sites, the coupon, the deal, the loyalty sites, which have large audiences, can also introduce them, right? Create top of funnel traffic for them as well. Now, if I'm writing reviews on what are the best, I don't know, running shoes, running sneakers, I'm probably not going to want to have 5,000 choices
Yeah.
for the customer, right? Because they've come to me to say to them, these are the best shoes, and these are the 3, 4, 5 maybe best places that you can find them. Perhaps if they're out of stock somewhere, here's an alternate. But I think when it comes to the content review, product review type sites, you got to have some parameters around the offers that you're showing to a customer versus, again, sort of more of the mass market of I'm looking to find a cashback or a coupon or a deal on a particular product, there you want to have much more coverage in terms of the merchants. But even then, it becomes, to your point, it becomes hard to manage when you get really into a long tail.
And is that where the benefits of networks come in, where you can have a breadth of offers that you might promote, but you've got a single sort of point of payment, as it were? You've got one sort of relationship you can manage in some sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's not even, that's not where, I mean, that is the benefit. The network, I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the network. I worked at a network for a long time, but yes, it's the sort of hub for the industry at the end of the day. And I always tell people, again, simplistically put, but you've got a bunch of advertisers, tens of thousands of advertisers, probably hundreds of thousands of publishers, affiliates, distribution partners on this side of the ecosystem. And the amount of relationships that need to be created, managed, optimized, reported on, paid, etc. It, it's it's exponential. There's so many, so the networks sort of come in, and even if there's a handful of networks, or even if there's, call it 20, right? That's a lot better than, as a publisher, having to set up 500 or 1,000 direct relationships, direct business development deals, direct tracking, et cetera. So I think the networks really add a lot of value in terms of being that hub or the interchange of where everything happens in the industry, where everything sort of passes through.
So one of the challenges that we see for our customers, so this is more on the merchant side, is 5% or it could be 1% of affiliates drive the vast, vast majority of value. I would imagine even on the affiliate side, it's a fairly similar experience where when you're trying to select from various different merchants, some are going to perform much, much better than others. Do you have any insight in terms of like how can you cut through that noise to find, the right affiliate partners or the right advertiser partners that are worth your time to invest in?
Yeah. In terms of finding the right partners and that sort of imbalance, or the 80-20 rule, there's always going to be some that are your, I always look at it like a pyramid. You have your foundational partners who are going to drive a lot of volume. And then you have sort of your mid tier who maybe there are certain levers you can pull in terms of those working, whether it's based, it's time based or offer based or maybe category based. And then, at the top of the pyramid, the smaller group are sort of the kind of potential diamonds in the rough. And I ultimately think at the end of the day, you have to test a little bit to find out what's going to work. I think you have to talk to these partners to understand what they're doing. And there's three factors in my mind to understanding the publishers and what they could potentially do. And that's one, who are they partnered with? Two is how are they driving traffic? What kind of audience they have? And three, what's the product? And that product could be the content that they're developing and delivering to users, or it could actually be some type of technology. So I think having an understanding of that will give you a good understanding of, essentially forecasting what the potential could be, but you're never really going to know. The other thing that I think brands and retailers need to keep in mind is not everyone is going to be a huge publisher, and that's okay. Affiliate, in my mind, is structured in a way that allows publishers to go out and find customers for you. That's their job, is they're finding customers for you. New customers, repeat customers, lapsed customers, but they are able to find customers. And if I'm a publisher who maybe only could find, one or two a month, that might be one or two that you didn't have anyway, and you could build some loyalty with. Or you might just be, as a publisher, they might just be starting out. So I'm also a big advocate of telling people, get integrated, put them in the program, start something. And if it doesn't work, it's low risk. But if it does, you're already integrated versus having to deal with it then down the road when they're much larger, and then sort of having to wait in line in terms of getting integrated and things like that, integrated into their site. Sometimes they limit the number of merchants they put on, or there's fees or stuff like that. So I think it's a big test and learn piece, but ultimately thinking of it as a portfolio and balancing that portfolio with different publishers who help achieve different goals for the portfolio, for the program.
So working with the publishers that you have, what are some of the most common recurring challenges that you see them bumping into over and over again, if such a thing? I imagine such a thing exists. So what have you seen?
They're all unique, which is what makes what I do really interesting. The common stuff I'd say is more tactical in
Okay.
nature, getting into programs, getting responses, putting the right information in front of brands, retailers, agencies, networks to give them as much information as hopefully they need to make a decision to put you into a program, things like that. And again,
Yeah.
the common stuff is more tactical because what I think is great about the industry is strategically, all these publishers are different. That's what I love about it. They're thinking about things differently. They're looking at new ways to engage consumers, new technologies that, you know, add value to consumers and to the brands and retailers as well. So, people do want to understand the market and, what's happening in the market at a macro level. But yeah, I think a lot of the sort of commonality is more about the nuts and bolts of our industry and sort of fine tuning it to work for them and hopefully, work in their favor in terms of establishing these partnerships in the short and the long term.
Yeah. What are some of the sort of recurring strategies you've seen? So I'll give you an example of what I'm kind of getting at here. When we look at the merchants who are using our software, we see that there's a clear difference in the quality of traffic. I shouldn't say quality of traffic, but the nature of traffic that comes from one affiliate or merchant versus another. And so you might have one affiliate who the nature of the traffic they're sending is more top of funnel awareness type traffic. And
Mm-hmm.
another affiliate might be more, lead gen and kind of higher intent, like a review site or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Are these things that publishers are thinking about in terms of the nature of the type of traffic that they're getting before they're sending it, right? Like, if you're a review site, you're probably playing more of an SEO arbitrage game, whereas some other sort of type of like content site that's more maybe like entertaining in nature, they're going to have a different type of traffic. Is this something that's on the mind of a publisher when they're building their business?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I think also the type of traffic converts differently as well. So traffic that comes maybe from organic search might convert differently than traffic that comes from paid social. So I think they need to think about that. And I also think they're thinking about it in terms of, they are building businesses. So what does that mean from an economic perspective? And how should they be thinking about it from an economic perspective? Meaning, if it is more top of funnel, are there strategies I need to employ in terms of how I price that essentially mitigates any risk of losing out to, more bottom of the funnel type publishers. And if I'm going to do that, what's the value I'm going to add? How am I going to articulate that value to a brand? So I think the traffic piece is super important. And I also think given the changes that we see on a fairly regular basis, especially in terms of how Google determines, quality of traffic, publishers really need to think about diversity. And that could be organic, paid, it could be newsletters, it could be, social. There's a lot of different things that they need to do to make sure that if changes happen in one place, they could at least soften the blow while they're trying to fix it in another place.
You said something there about pricing, and I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering to what degree, in your experience, have publishers had much, if any, influence on pricing, or are they generally taking pricing as dictated by the merchants or advertisers?
I think there's a couple ways to look at it. So in terms of your CPA rate, I think if you're just starting out, you're going to take what's offered. At least that's usually how I would approach it because you got to sort of prove what you can do. If you're a lot larger, you probably have some more flexibility in terms of pushing to optimize those CPA rates and negotiate those CPA rates. But again, a lot of times there's got to be a give and a get. I think in terms of pricing, though, when it comes to it costs X to be in my newsletter or it costs X to show up at the top of a particular category page, that I think is more in the publisher's hands. Obviously, you don't want to be too far askew from, a market benchmark when it comes to that, but you'll also probably have a good sense based on traffic, audience, uniqueness of the audience, reach, et cetera, that's going to say, this is what I typically should charge for a newsletter. So I think when it comes to sort of those more enhanced or paid placements, publishers are really driving that. Market controls it a little bit, but publishers are ultimately know what they want to charge for that media. On the CPA side, early stage, you're taking what's there. You want to get into the program and show what you can do. But then I think as you get bigger, you have a little more leeway. And the other thing I'd add is I think it also depends on the model. So what I've seen is when you talk to some brands or agencies and you're like, hey, this is a loyalty site, they understand the mechanics of the loyalty business and what the economics look like. So it's like, oh, well, we actually have an offer here that we could provide specific for loyalty sites because we know you have to account for pass back to the end user. So it's typically higher. So you will see some instances of things like that happen as well in terms of how pricing is sort of allocated on a per publisher or per category basis.
I was curious what sort of experience you may have had working with publishers who might be mixing affiliate network, CPA type arrangements with ad networks where there's a CPC type model. Is that something
Yeah.
you've been involved in working with publishers?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not involved tactically, but strategically, I've looked at it. I think that there's more CPC offerings coming into the channel, and I think publishers are ultimately making decisions on where they can get the most value for a click that they're going to send to a user. And if a CPA backs out to a higher effective CPC, then that's the path they take. And if a CPC through one of these other, call it non-traditional affiliate networks, backs out higher for them, that's the route that they might take as well. But yeah, I think more and more of that is starting to happen. I think we're going to hear more about it in the future as well, given that more publishers are starting to play in that space from what I could see.
Yeah. If you were to give some advice to an advertiser or merchant who's trying to appeal to publishers, what are some of the things you might tell them?
That's a great question. Usually I get asked the question the other way around. What should publishers tell advertisers? I always give similar advice. And again, I'll acknowledge it's fairly tactical and basic. But the advice I'll give advertisers is it's not even about appealing to them. It's about having a conversation with them and what they're doing and understanding what they're doing. Because by understanding what a publisher is building, the type of traffic they're driving, the type of customers that they're trying to bring to you as an advertiser, when you look at the sum versus all the parts, you start to have a much better picture of what's happening in the landscape and how all, like we talked about earlier, that portfolio approach, how it all can come together as a meaningful strategy for an advertiser. There's too many times where I think I see advertisers or brands focused on just the big partners, which are important, but then you sort of neglect looking at what's sort of up and coming. You neglect what's happening in the growth mode, the potential growth mode of your program. So I think, my advice is always just take the call and hear what they have to say. If you talk to 2 new publishers a week, you're going to learn a ton, and is ultimately at a macro level going to help shape a much better strategy for you, for your affiliate program, overall customer acquisition in the business. And when it comes to getting the attention of a publisher, I think it's just about what's unique, what's the potential opportunity for them. You sort of got to put yourself in their shoes. If I'm an advertiser and I want a large publisher to partner with me, so what? What should I be telling them that's sort of the so what? what makes it meaningful for them? Where is it going to create some differentiation for them? What am I offering them? What am I offering their customers? And, you know, is it really something that I think will get their attention, but the attention of their users as well? So I think the big piece is sort of putting yourself in their shoes. And then you could think better about what that value proposition might be that would entice them to feature you on their site.
Before we wrap up, I'd just be curious to see, like, have you seen any kind of major evolutionary or revolutionary changes in the affiliate industry over the last, call it whatever, 15 plus years or whatever that you've been in the affiliate space? And do you see anything, significant underway right now in terms of major changes in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many. We started, it was very one to one, if you will, and it still is. But now, over the years, a lot of the affiliate platforms have introduced things like attribution reporting, commissioning based on attribution logic, first touch, last touch, commissioning based on coupon code that's been used, enhanced reporting and analytics and benchmarking. Maybe I'm dating myself because I've been in the space for a long time, but seeing those things over the last 15, 20 years, I think sometimes we take for granted how far we've come in terms of the technology that's available and the data that's available to us to make better decisions about these partnerships in the space. I think influencer has certainly become a much bigger part of the space over the last few years. There are so many different influencer businesses out there, a lot of them playing in the affiliate space, leveraging the relationships that affiliate offers at scale and the economics through affiliate as well. I think it's probably cliche, but content as well. The sort of rise of the BuzzFeeds and Hearst and Condé Nast and Wirecutters coming into the space. That wasn't there a long time ago. And I think that's been these new models coming into the space has certainly been another big change. And even when you think about it, again, it's over a longer period of time, but the likes of, for publishers, it's always very fragmented for them. An advertiser usually has one, maybe two networks or platforms they work with, and that's their affiliate program. Publishers, you're part of many different networks, platforms, subnetworks, et cetera. So the rise over the years of the concept of a subnetwork and the fact that there's multiple ones, the likes of technology like Trackonomics or Affiliate that rolls up all publisher data in one place, I think has been a huge leap forward for the industry. I think more recently we've started to see these Amazon networks popping up as well that sort of capitalize on margin opportunity that the marketplace sellers have that can then offer better rates to publishers promoting those particular SKUs or ASINs. I think that's something more recent that's started to happen. And like we talked about earlier, even the influx of more CPC opportunities in the space as well. So I could probably keep rambling,
Sure.
but there's been a lot, right, going all the way back to the beginning and even over the last few years. And I think the great part about our space, which I always say, is the publishers especially are driving innovation, and it's a great place. Affiliate's a great place for them to monetize. So I think we are always going to see a lot of innovation, almost a hub of innovation will always happen from a distribution perspective in the affiliate ecosystem.
Cool. Great answer. Thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me, Adam. I really appreciate it.